Hey, ready. We are live. Rushing into position again because this is a massive week. Where to even begin? You may have heard there's been some data breaches lately, allegedly. Get the iPad ready, get the Telegram channel ready so we can read what's going on there as well. That's always fascinating reading. Let me just put this over here and that over there. Hey, Aaron. G'day. Good morning. Or afternoon, or whatever it is. Get this loaded here. I have back to my things today. It's still only 7 a.m. Been up 2.5 hours already. Oh, more than that. All right. Let's do the easy bit first. Or the one that requires less controversy. Let's say that. Let's do the sponsor. Good timing this week, Malwarebytes, as people are getting owned left, right, and center. Malwarebytes Browser Guard blocks phishing, ads, scams, and trackers for safer, faster browsing. And if ever there was a time to need to browse safer, it is probably now. As I mentioned before, Malwarebytes came on after my unfortunate phishing incident earlier this year rather, when my MailChimp things got phished. Very coincidentally with this week's sponsor, very strangely, someone was arguing on Twitter. I know, what are the chances? Arguing on Twitter this week. We'll still call it Twitter. And their position was that passkeys were spam and malware. Let that sink in. Now, passkeys, of course, for the sites that offer them, one of the things that is going to save you from being phished like I was. Malwarebytes Browser Guard is another thing that's going to save you from getting phished like I was. And we are going to talk about, particularly today, and particularly as we get into the details of the Cybergeddon situation that we're talking about right now, a lot of incidents of people being phished, being socially engineered. Inevitably, that is the vector for many of these data breaches that we're going to cover here. So anyway, point being, go and check out Malwarebytes. Big thanks to them and Browser Guard for coming on board this year and helping me turn a very unfortunate situation into a new sponsor. So that's good. All right. Now, actually, wow, that's fascinating. I've just realized, you may notice my video just went a little bit jaggedy. And I think it's like gradually recovering. That happened as soon as I opened encoding overloaded. Considered turning down video settings or using a faster encoding preset. But now we're back. Now it's smooth. That went to hell as soon as I loaded up the Tor browser, which has got the website that we're about to talk about in a moment loaded up in it. Which is interesting because it crashes out on my laptop too. So that website is doing something which is just consuming a heap of resources. Now it's running in the Tor browser bundle. I'm not worried about it, but maybe hackers just build like shitty ransomware websites. So how are we going to run it? Maybe we can run it on my laptop without destroying my video stream. Let's see if that works. To bring us back on topic to the issue of the day, as I fire up the laptop, we fire up the Tor things there. I've bookmarked this. Let's just go to this. There is a collective has been formed out of multiple different hacking groups: Shining Hunters, Scattered Spider, and Lapsus. And a lot of this has been in the news already. I don't think I'm going to add too much that you probably haven't seen already if you're paying attention to this. It's a collective of people, and it's a little bit like people go, all right, well, who are hacking collectives? Are they teams? Are they strictly organized? And look, it really depends. I mean, everyone remember Anonymous? Apparently they're still around. There's people, the Anonymous Twitter account's got a hell of a lot of followers. But it's always like a loose collective of people, and I think this is very different for many different reasons. But these are people who coordinate online. They operate under pseudonyms. They break into things. They backstab. They steal money. engage in criminal activity. And inevitably, we've got multiple different collectives here that appear to have combined some forces and have been very effective at breaking into large organisations. And in the last week, we've seen this website stood up. I won't give you the address for it. They did have a ClearWeb website running with the name of a popular hacking forum on a Hungarian TLD. That stood up there on the ClearWeb for some time before that got nuked a few days ago. There is now an Onion site, which of course has not been nuked. That's still standing up there. And this particular website has now just dumped, well, they haven't dumped yet, we'll get to that, has now announced a whole bunch of different organisations which we know have had data breaches because they've been disclosed, like Qantas. We'll talk a lot about Qantas today. And the headline here is Salesforce, because a lot of this data is from Salesforce. I think the whole theme of this is it's from Salesforce. 989.45 million, roughly a billion plus records from Salesforce Inc. And what seems to have transpired here is you've got people, kids, very often kids, either legally kids or very young adults. We know this because when they get arrested, we find out. And multiple people from these groups have been arrested in recent times. And one of the fascinating things about it is a lot of them are in places like the UK. You know, like it's one thing to be a cyber criminal in Russia. You're sort of beyond the reach of Western arms. But if you're a cyber criminal in London, like you're going to get caught. Sooner or later, you're going to get caught if you keep this up. If you are doing this and you haven't been caught yet, stop it. It's an inevitable outcome. So anyway, you've got these folks and they've said billion records. One of the things I find very fascinating about this, I'm going to read some of this, is it's like the bravado with which this website has been put together. Keeping in mind, again, at some point in time, multiple members of this collective will be picked up and that veneer of bravado will disappear and we'll see who's behind it. And just to caveat all of this as well, I've said many times, for the most part, these are largely good kids. I'll come back to maybe to the com in a moment as well. Largely good kids who've gone off the rails at some point in time and would otherwise have amazing careers and do wonderful stuff in our industry. So I'm trying not to be too, I guess, derogatory about them. And in fairness as well, every time I spend time with law enforcement agencies talking about, sort of cyber choices and determining whether you go down the good path or the bad path, they're always trying to drive kids in the good path. Law enforcement agencies don't want to go arresting, children or very young adults for cybercrime. So everybody wants these guys to be successful in a good way, I guess is my point. So framing it that way as I explain this, maybe just keep that in mind. So anyway, they've posted here. Contact us to negotiate the ransom for all your customers. Data will be leaked. If we come to a resolution, all individual extortions against your customers will be withdrawn from. Nobody else will have to pay us if you pay Salesforce Inc. Because what appears to have transpired here is, I'm going to choose the words carefully here. There's a combination of what I've seen online and conversations that I have had in person with an exec in one of these companies that's being ransomed at the moment. What appears to have happened is, in many cases, it is the support desks for these organizations that have been socially engineered and have ultimately led to access to Salesforce data. So in a way, blaming Salesforce for this when it's the support desks of Salesforce customers, it's kind of a little bit shitty. But anyway, if Salesforce does not engage with us to resolve this, we will completely target each and every individual customer of theirs listed below. Failure to comply will result in massive consequences. If you are listed below, we advise you to take every action to protect yourselves and reach out to us to resolve this. Do not be mistaken that your SaaS provider will protect you or protect all of you. They won't. Don't be the next headline. Make the correct decision and reach out. Now, it just feels very aggressive, doesn't it? Where it gets really interesting, that's not what I wanted. Where's the one I wanted? Somewhere in here was a much longer version, which I don't want to read all of, but it just included a lot of legal threats that feel really uncomfortable. Was it victims, Telegram audience? It's probably, you know what I might actually be better doing? Even on my laptop, this Tor site just runs like a dog. I'm not quite sure. Maybe they're trying to crypto mine in the background. I don't think the Tor browser bundle is actually going to get you very far doing that. Let's go to the thread that I've got on this, because that has a bit more info in it. Crap. I say oh crap because I scheduled an alert about doing this live stream in 30 minutes, except instead of scheduling it for 6:30, which is 30 minutes before 7 o'clock, I scheduled it for 7, and I thought I deleted it and it just went out. So sorry if you're reading this later on. All right, let's go down to, here we go. It's in the tweet thread. Hackmanic has been very good at covering this. So in their tweet thread, we've got the compromised data overview, which just goes on and on, near 1 billion records. I kind of covered that already. The bit I think is more interesting here is, you know how I just said, for the most part, they're kids, very young adults, otherwise good people, just gone down a wrong path. That argument starts to fall apart when you read the tone in this and the threatening nature of it. And like if you're one of these guys and you're listening to this, this will be read to you in court one day. Like, keep that in mind. All right, here it goes. I won't read the whole thing, and for the sake of everyone listening along at home, I'll actually drop this in the chat right now. This is the tweet that has the stuff in it. I will be documenting publicly how your company made little to no attempt to prevent unauthorized access to PII, which contained, including but not limited to driver's licenses, dates of birth, social security numbers, and more. For example, we email taunted you from, and then there's an email address in here, in July, and you never took any further preventive action to stop us. This especially proves our point. It would be bad if we went public with this and showed proof. Now, I'll come back to that. I'll also be submitting a full document with clear outlines of how your company as a data controller under European GDPR and many other similar laws such as CCPA, HIPAA, which of course is the healthcare one, in the US, etc., could have, over our year-long campaign, prevented such intrusions and data thefts. So obviously they're trying to create the picture here that Salesforce in particular has failed in their various duties of care. And these guys are saying, look, we've documented it all and we're going to hand all that over to the authorities. Though I think what's really fascinating is that the criminals are saying we're going to provide information to the enforcement agencies because you guys have done the wrong thing. There's an irony there. Certainly bravado. I think we will actually read this all because it's interesting. This document will contain technical details regarding how the attacks were conducted, the fingerprint of our requests, and how this clear, defined pattern of networking traffic could have been easily blocked. This document will contain specific details regarding number of US, Californian, European, and many other global citizens affected from mainly data violation strict countries like South Korea and China, along with the fields of data expired. Let me just see if any of this more is... Oh, yeah, this one's interesting. Lastly, our documentation will also include and support or suggest that there are grounds for criminal negligence charges. Salesforce had a duty of care of implementing reasonable security measures to prevent these simple data breaches. Salesforce was provided the intelligence of the attacks taking place, the time and opportunity to make reasonable effort to prevent these attacks, considering that these attacks took place over many months. We believe that you have been criminally negligent and negligent to these attacks taking place. And again, like I'm just not, well, actually, I am sure the legal folks in Salesforce, of which I imagine there are very, very many, are not really looking at this going, oh yeah, shit, we've done the wrong thing. That will not be their immediate reaction to this. Our documentation will be provided directly to the and there's all caps, United States District of Northern District of California. We will engage in open dialogue with our press contacts, civil commercial litigation lawyers, and answering any questions. So I find this really fascinating where, again, the criminals that have broken into these systems are saying that we will use commercial litigation lawyers to come after some of the biggest tech companies in the world. That's just nuts. As you've likely been informed by your lawyers, you are responsible as a data processor to take all measures pursuant to Article 32 of GDPR. I always find this Section 2, as soon as people start quoting privacy law legislation, let's go on. In assessing the appropriate level of security, account shall be taken in particular to the risk of particular unauthorized disclosure of or access to, and it's obviously trying to sound very, very legal and authoritative. As our campaign spans over a full year period, it is correct to say that you had time to assess your liabilities and risks and take all measures pursuant to that same article under Section 2. Very lawyery, isn't it? As you know, all of this can be avoided very easily and swiftly. Look, to cut to chase, I was about to say no one's going to pay any money for this. Salesforce certainly isn't going to pay any money. Certainly the big names we see here are not going to pay any money. I'll be very surprised if anybody pays any money. Part of the problem here, and I was doing a bunch of press on this yesterday in Australia, and this was the question here locally, and part of it is because Qantas is in there. Part of the problem is that in the good old days, ransomware was an attack against availability. Your files would be encrypted. They're all still there. They're nowhere else. They're still there in your local infrastructure. And there is a key. And if you pay money and you get the key, you unlock the files and you get your files back. And that's the end of it. It has pivoted over recent years to attacks against not just availability, but attacks against, I completely lost the word now, disclosure. Because the threat now is we're going to leak your things. And the problem with this is that it's one thing to pay a ransom and see the immediate result, which is that your files are unlocked, and to know that that model of ransomware wasn't replicating the data elsewhere. It's another thing to pay a ransom with the promise that someone will not leak the data that they've taken from you. Now, there's an argument to be made that criminal ecosystems have to deliver on their promise. Otherwise, it's just bad for the industry. You know, if we had ransomware crews getting paid and then leaking data all over the place, then no one's going to pay in the future because they know it'll just get leaked. But that remains the problem because there are instances where that's happened and there are no guarantees. And I would be hugely surprised, particularly when there's multiple people involved, who are all anonymous, who are all young adults or kids who are committing criminal acts. I'd be hugely surprised if all of them did actually permanently delete every piece of data were a ransom to be paid. And all of these companies know this. They all know this. So I don't expect anybody's going to be paying ransoms here. And many of these companies have publicly said, we will not be paying any ransom. Now, there is then the question of, is this legitimate or not? I have had lots of emails from Qantas already about this breach. Not me as the cyber guy with Have I Been Pwned, but me as the Qantas frequent flyer. And the reason I've had lots is I've had multiple for myself. Charlotte's had them. My wife has had them. My 15-year-old son has had them. And the only reason my 13-year-old daughter hasn't had them is apparently they're only emailing people who are 15 or older. And I don't quite know why that is. Regardless, there has clearly been a data breach at Qantas. There is no doubt about that. And many of these other airlines, not just airlines, sorry, there are other airlines in here. We've got Air France and KLM in here. We've got Aeromexico in here. Many of these other companies I have also seen disclosures from. Cartier, Chanel, I think Pandora. Yep, Pandora's in there as well. We have seen disclosures from them. Now, you don't generally see disclosures from a company unless they're pretty confident that there has been a data breach. So I have no doubt that these breaches are legitimate. The question then is, are these the guys that have taken the data? And to cut to the chase, will the threats be followed out on? So let's go through the threats here. And just to finish off on this page here, should you comply, we will withdraw from any active or pending negotiation individually from your customers. Your customers will not be attacked again. This is targeted at Salesforce. Nor will they face a ransom from us. Again, should you pay, we are able to thoroughly elaborate more if you engage with us. Now, the threat here is that all of this data is going to be dumped at midnight New York time. Now, for us here in Australia, that is 2 p.m. on Saturday. So at the time of recording, that's about 31 hours from now. Now, I posted an update. I've got a thread here on Twitter, whatever we call it now, where I'm adding updates to this. And I added an update a few hours ago via the Telegram channel, which we'll talk about in a moment. And this says, we've now made it so on exactly 11:59 p.m. New York time tomorrow, the data of companies who have not paid will be leaked. So they're saying they've set the time bomb going on their dark web website here, such that this data is going to be leaked in 31 hours from now. Now, again, no one's going to pay. So now there's this ticking time bomb. Now, I mentioned I got this off Telegram. And incidentally, probably for like very obvious reasons, I'm not going to share the Onion address or the Telegram channel. It is very broadly circulated, but it's not going to be broadly circulated by me. What is kind of fascinating here is there is a Telegram channel here for these folks. It has more than 14,000 subscribers on it. Now, these subscribers are obviously people like me. There are a lot of people in the InfoSec industry, guaranteed a lot of law enforcement, and of course the folks who are responsible for these data breaches. And it is just fascinating to see the language used here. I was showing Charlotte before. She's kind of shocked at the language being used. And I was going to say, what's the right way to put this? I think we're very well-traveled, very worldly, very open to, not much surprises us anymore. Probably less surprises me, given what I do. But she was kind of shocked at, I guess, the combination of the language, the attitude, the bravado. I was saying to her this morning, it's like, yeah, it's basically what you expect from anonymous kids on the internet. And again, many of them are kids like legally children or very young adults. And this is the sort of sledging and bravado and intentionally inflammatory language which you expect. But it is fascinating to see it so extensively documented on this channel. And a lot of this as well is sledging towards the likes of law enforcement agencies. So if I was to have a brief look here, there are multiple references to FBI, for example, which I find kind of fascinating. And again, all of this is being very extensively archived. Like to have this discussion in the public domain, it will be tied back to many of these people at some point in time in the future. And just to sort of touch on that, I feel like I'm continually oscillating between this is criminal behavior that's going to land you in jail to these are kids that have, otherwise good people that have taken a bit of a wrong turn. A lot of these folks are neurodiverse as well. And that very often makes it very difficult for them, particularly when you're younger and you're at your parents' place, which is where we all are when you're younger. And you're in the sanctity of your own bedroom, sitting there on your PC, thinking you're anonymous. You behave in ways that are not reflective of who you really are as an individual. And it's just a bit of a shame, to see people chucking away a future like this. James says, I actually love the comments here. Ryan says, I think the kids feel they have no voice and have grown up with technology, think that crime is the only voice they have. And James has said, I think part of it is feeling control over something too. Well, I agree with both here. I think it'd be really interesting to hear actually from a psychologist about what it is that's driving people, which is quite fascinating. So I suspect from the discussions I've had with people, and I've certainly had discussions with many people who have later been arrested and ended up in all sorts of trouble. And every one of these discussions I have with people, I have to expect one day will probably end up on the desks of some of the law enforcement agents and the actual individuals that I've spent time with, and in some cases consider friends as well. So that's always an interesting discussion. I think for a lot of these people, there's different sort of motives. I'm doing a talk in The Hague next month for the Intercop event around cyber offender prevention. And I'm trying to articulate a good narrative around things like the motives of people. And one of the things that does come up a lot, and I don't think that's the case here, and I'll explain why. One of the things that comes up a lot is people say, kids are curious, they're online, they're exploring, fine. They find vulnerabilities. They don't think the company will take it seriously, which is why they pulled all the data out, because then the company has to respond. Now, of course, part of the way they respond is legally. But they feel that their voice is not heard, which I think is the point being made here in the chat. So I get that. Where I think things are a bit different with this collective, there is a different degree of malice involved. And I mentioned the COM before. If you've not heard of the COM, do some searching on that. But this other collective of folks who are engaging in much more serious forms of cybercrime, which often leak into IRL crime. It might leak into things like swatting, which is a really, really serious offence because of the risk of injury or even death. Leaking into serious theft of crypto, sometimes IRL, in real life theft of crypto wallets. There's a point at which it stops being curiosity and starts being serious, malicious, life-threatening crime. And a bunch of these folks are borderline on that. Looking at the messages, Al Tate, I will come back to coffee because I do have something on the shortlist now. Aaron says, my thoughts are these kids are clever, tech-savvy, and fall in with the wrong crowd, start doing petty cybercrime stuff and it spirals. And it is. Yeah, you're totally right. And it's very much like IRL crime. Kids don't start out by stealing cars. They start out by shoplifting lollies, or something very small, and it spirals. And then, particularly as a parent, you go, where are their parents? Well, the parents usually don't know what they're doing. They're sitting there on their computer, very often completely unobserved, unsupervised, and they're smarter than their parents anyway. If you're a teenage kid, you're almost certainly smarter online than your parents. So the parents are not aware either. James says, there was this one turd I had no sympathy for. He got busted stealing his teacher's creds, and she got fired for leaving them out. He was just angry they took his flipper and blamed everyone else. Well, there's multiple levels of things to unpack there. I don't think you should get fired for leaving your creds out. I also don't think you should leave your creds out. Yeah. There's also the question of whether your creds alone should be enough to get you into an account. Also, why did he have a flipper? This is the Flipper Zero, which can relay RF codes and break you into things. So that's kind of where we're at with these guys now. This Telegram channel is for the most part very active. It's been quiet for the last hour, but it's a lot of it's a lot of sort of crazy bravado. And look, you'll see a lot of this in the thread that I've got going here on Twitter, as well as from a couple of other accounts, some of who I've actually quoted in here as well. International Cyber Digest is posting a great bit of stuff here. It's on X. I'm not sure if they're on Blue Sky or other places. This does tend to still be where most people are. Hackmanic, I mentioned before, got a lot of good content. One thing that did pop up yesterday, 2 days ago actually, which just sort of illustrates that you've got to take every one of these claims with a grain of salt. A mate of mine got in touch with me and said, have you seen they've added Telstra? Now, Telstra is Australia's biggest telco. Telstra is massive. And these guys have added Telstra. They've said, Telstra, we highly advise you, and then it's really hard to read because it's dark blue on a black background, something. Your organisation can prevent the release of this data, regain control over the situation, and all operations remain stable as always. We highly recommend a decision maker to get involved as we are presenting a clear and mutually beneficial opportunity to resolve this matter. I'm not sure it's actually that beneficial to Telstra to get around. Like, I know what you mean, but that's probably not the way they look at it. Now, their deadline is 10-13, which I assume they mean 13-10, unless you're in one of only two places in the world actually do it that way, America and Belize. So anyway, use letters for months, folks. It makes it easier on all of us. And then they've said 19 million plus personally identifiable data record count. Kind of interesting. Record count is then 16 something. We possess full name, address, and more. That was a bit blunt. They put a sample there. Now, I tweeted this out, and Telstra actually replied to me. And they said, we've investigated it, and the data has been scraped from public sources, not Telstra systems. No passwords, banking details, or personal identification data like driver's license or Medicare numbers, which is our healthcare system, are included. Now, I've seen that line from Telstra go over and over and over again. So obviously they've established a position on it. This is what the social accounts are repeating over and over again. That is entirely feasible. We do have, for example, the white pages here in Australia. We have names, phone numbers, and physical addresses, which appears to line up with the data that these guys are alleging they have. Now, it's also not good for business as a criminal to make a claim which is incorrect, because then people question all your other claims. Now, whether that's accurate or not, we're yet to see. So they've put a deadline which is 3 days after this other deadline that's coming up in a day and a bit. We'll see, but it doesn't look too serious on the face of it. What else we got here? Aaron says, I was thinking, Troy, would a community-type forum, like the Let's Encrypt forum, cut down a lot of support tickets for Have I Been Pwned? I think our AI bot is actually doing really well. If I'm honest, most of the tickets we're getting is still from freaking resellers. Yeah, which is a different thing. We in fact have a reseller portal now built into Have I Been Pwned. We give it to resellers. They're still asking all these questions about things that should be easy answers. We've got a macro that says go here, answer it. So I think we've actually, for the most part, solved that. But thank you anyway. James says paper white pages. Those are gone here. There is whitepages.com.au. I'm not sure that we still get a paper white page. I feel like it's been a few years, but not more than probably 3 or 4 years since I've seen one. Yeah, and Mary says it looks like they're publishing the white pages. Yeah, quite possibly. Now, over here on my laptop, that Tor website has I think the official term is shit itself. Reading, though, what was in my tweet here about this week's breach, I've mentioned, obviously, Salesforce, Qantas we'll come back to, we'll drill into in a moment, FedEx, Toyota, Disney, UPS, and a whole bunch more. And in fact, it's in that first tweet of the thread that I mentioned before. Very large gigabyte counts of these services. So, yeah, look, let's see what actually lands. I don't know if I'm suddenly going to be extraordinarily busy tomorrow, or if it'll be a bit of a storm in a teacup. What I do know is we won't be downloading the Qantas data, which brings me to the next point, and to the blog post of the week. I've had this ready to go for quite a while now, and it was only after yesterday morning I started getting more queries, particularly about Qantas, and especially from the media, that I wrote this. I'm very proud of this blog title. Court injunctions are the thoughts and prayers of data breach response. Now, you know how every time something terrible happens, and it's usually something like another school shooting in America, and people are like, it's terrible, like all this death and guns and everything, thoughts and prayers. And everybody everywhere else in the world is going, why don't you just ban the guns? And they're like, no, thoughts and prayers, because America is very, very different for many reasons. So thoughts and prayers, obviously the intention is to express sympathy, and sympathy is good. But thoughts and prayers don't actually do anything. Like, thoughts and prayers don't stop every rando in America, by the feeling of it, having a gun in their living room. I know it's not everyone, but I think it's about half of you. Like, it's a lot. it doesn't actually do anything tangible. And this is what court injunctions to block access to breached data also do. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple of very public things. I've had more personal experience with another one I'm not going to get into on the public timeline here. Nothing too terrible came out of it for us, but it's just frustrating. We have a construct here in Australia, as in the UK, as in other parts of the world as well, of a court being able to, or rather, normally what happens is a law firm representing a breach company goes along to the court and they apply for an injunction to suppress and make illegal the dissemination, the publishing, and the downloading and the accessing of breached data. And I think the first really noteworthy case of that here in Australia was about 2 years ago. A law firm called HWL Ebsworth, they got ransomed and they got an injunction. So they went along to court, and I think that they got I think that the process here is you get like a temporary injunction, which is something that's granted very quickly, and then you can get a permanent injunction, which is then permanent. And the injunction makes it illegal to publish the data, and also makes it illegal to download the data. Now, you may be thinking right now, aren't they targeting criminals anyway? And how much do criminals care? I'll just read the bit I quoted here. So I found a good story from a law website. What's this? Yeah, lawyersweekly.com.au. This is related to HWL Ebsworth. The final interlocutory injunction restrained hackers from Alpha V or Black Cat from publishing the HWL data on the internet, sharing it with any person, or using the information for any reason other than for obtaining legal advice on the court's orders. So the injunction made it illegal for the Russian cybercrime groups to publish the data. You following me so far? Now in your inside voice, imagine how a Russian crime group trying to ransom an Aussie law firm is going to reply. Figure it out in your head, and then I will read you exactly what they replied. Their response, because they have to get served with this as well, all right? So I wrote here, the threat actors were subsequently served with the injunction. Their response when they got the injunction was, fuck you fuckers, which is exactly what you would expect a Russian crime group to say after being told that it is illegal to publish the data that they're trying to use to ransom the law firm. It's just the insanity of it, even just reading it is kind of crazy. So clearly it's going to make absolutely no difference to the criminals wanting to do crime. Trying to make crime illegal isn't going to fix the problem. It also made it illegal for law-abiding Australians who know about the injunction to access the data. Now, what that means is the media, for example, can't go downloading the data and pouring all over it. And I guess when it's a law firm, think about the sort of data a law firm has. If you've ever had to deal with lawyers, particularly about anything unpleasant, there is a lot of information that you give lawyers that are extraordinarily personal. I've gone through a divorce. I know how much really, really, really personal information lawyers have. Other people go through other financial disputes or commercial disputes, or they're injured somewhere, or something terrible has happened in their life. Law firms have enormously sensitive information in very large volumes. And you can kind of argue that keeping that out of the eye of the press, for example, is not a bad thing. It's not going to stop criminals from publishing the data. It's not going to stop them from trying to ransom the company. It's not going to stop other criminals from them going and grabbing that data and using it to ransom the individuals, as we saw with Ashley Madison. Ashley Madison was a great example of where it wasn't just the initial breach, it was the entire criminal ecosystem that spread out after that. For years and years and years later, victims of the Ashley Madison data breach were still getting ransom demands, individual victims. Which brings us to Qantas. So when did I get the first Qantas email? It's back in July. I got, and I've put this on my tweet thread, Let's have a look. July 2. So we're now July, August, September, October. So we're now more than 3 months in. I got my notice about the Qantas data breach. And not too long after that, let's see how far we were. I feel like it was maybe a few weeks later, Qantas went and got an injunction. They got a temporary injunction. They've subsequently been granted with a permanent injunction to, again, as I said before, make crime illegal. So the threat actors, the folks that we were just talking about over here, are not allowed to publish the Qantas data. If they publish it tomorrow, that's naughty. You can't do that. Now, clearly, that's not going to stop them from publishing that. But what the injunction is going to do is it's going to stop us, as Have I Been Pwned, from notifying our subscribers. We will not be able to download the data. Not only will we not be able to download the broader corpus of the Qantas data if it gets published, I won't even be able to download my data, my kids' data. That would break the injunction. Now, I had a chat with a lawyer friend about this yesterday, and in fact, I've quoted one of the things that they've said here, which will bring me back to the point I made earlier, those 3 criteria, where the injunction only works for law-abiding Australians who know about the injunction. Now, the last one's obvious. If you don't know about the injunction, then that's not going to stop you from going and grabbing the data. Now, the Qantas one is fairly broadly circulated. The law-abiding bit is really, really obvious. The folks here from Lapsus Shiny, Scattered, whoever, do not abide by the law. That's why they have the data in the first place, because they went out there and broke the law and broke into a protected system and took the data. And the third bit, people in Australia. I was particularly interested in how enforceable an injunction here in Australia is in other parts of the world. And here's the response I got, and I copied and pasted this directly from the chat I was having with this friend. They said, it would depend on which country and whether it has a reciprocal agreement with Australia, e.g. like the UK, and also who you are trying. There was a very casual chat. This is a proper, it is a proper lawyer specialising in this space. Also, who you are trying to enforce it against, and then it's up to the court in that country to determine. But as this is an injunction, so not, e.g., for a debt against a specific person, it's almost impossible. You can't just register a foreign judgment somewhere against the world at large, as far as I know. So in other words, if you are in the UK, which is probably, that and New Zealand are probably like our closest cousins in terms of the way our laws operate, it's very unlikely that that injunction is enforceable against you anyway. Now, maybe to be a little bit different if you're from some massive media outlet, and maybe that has a footprint in Australia or something like that. But if it was like the British Have I Been Pwned, if there is one, it seems highly unlikely that the injunction would be valid anyway. Now, think about what's in this Qantas data breach as well. I mean, I mentioned H.W.L. Ebsworth, super, super sensitive lawyer stuff. So here's what Qantas has told me is out there about me. Address, name, I assume address is home address, name, email address, Qantas frequent flyer number, tier, points balance, status credits, date of birth, phone number. Now, the vast majority of that has already been leaked about me all over the place anyway. Really, the only things that are new and the most volatile of fairly benign data classes here is my frequent flyer number, my points balance, my status credits, and tiers. Now, in case this is a foreign concept to you, your points balance is what you can use to redeem flights. You get points balance, or get points when you take flights. You get points if you spend them on a credit card that is participating in the Qantas frequent flyer membership. Your status credits go towards your tier. So the more you fly, the more status credits you get. They cycle over every year, and they decide whether you are a bronze, a silver, a gold, a platinum, or a platinum 1. If you fly as much as me and you get that, that determines the tier. It's relatively benign, and if you sort of stretch your imagination and go, what's the worst possible thing you could do with this data? I think it'd be something like, hey, look at this politician and their points balance that they've obtained on the public dime. It will stop that sort of commentary from the media. It will not stop that data being leaked. And the thing that really bugs me here, and to give credit, begrudgingly give credit to the hackers in the Telegram channel here, they've nailed it. I put this in the blog post. So I screen capped this yesterday from their discussion. So they've said, Qantas, why are you lying to your citizens? And then they've quoted a part of an article which I saw appear in an ABC story here. Now the quote is, this is from a Qantas spokesperson, "We continue to offer a 24/7 support line and specialist identity protection advice to affected customers, and through the ongoing injunction we obtained through the New South Wales Supreme Court, we have legal protections in place to prevent the stolen data being accessed or released." The next comment from the hacker guys here, "All your injunction does is prevent media outlets, journalists." And they're right. They're 100% right. That is, at best, a misleading statement from Qantas. We have legal protections in place to prevent the data being accessed or released. No, you don't. That does not prevent the data being released. And to quote from the Russian cybercrime groups who responded to HWL Ebsworth, the likely response that Qantas will receive is "fuck you fuckers," because that is the attitude that these guys are going to have when they dump that data publicly tomorrow, if they follow through on that threat. And that's actually the last comment they made here. Your data will be released and it will be accessed. I don't like the way Qantas has handled this. I don't like the fact that they've taken an injunction out, and I don't like the fact that they have then made a statement which implies that somehow that injunction will prevent the data from being released. That injunction will prevent law-abiding Australians who know about the data from accessing it. The nicest people will not have access to the data. The worst people will have access to the data. That fact is absent from their statement. Now, to be very interesting, if I was to lend my expert opinion on what will happen here, I think this data will be dumped. And the reason why is because we know that there's been a data breach. We know that it's related to Salesforce. We know that it is likely this party that has the data. We know that Qantas will not pay. And I'll honestly be surprised if that data does not just Qantas, but all the other ones as well. I will be surprised if nothing is leaked tomorrow. So then the discussion next week is going to be, well, who has it? Like, the injunction's there. Who has it? Well, the answer is going to be basically anyone who is not Australian or not law-abiding or doesn't know about the injunction. It is going to be all over the place, except for with me and other people who are law-abiding Aussies who know about it. It's just mind-blowing. I did actually say in here, like to throw a bone, there's clearly a reason why injunctions are taken out. If they're so completely useless at actually suppressing data, why are they taken out? Now, I mentioned there was an example I'm not going to get into detail with, and I won't name the company, but in my previous experience chatting with a lawyer who applied for an injunction on behalf of a company that had a data breach, they said, we needed to assure our customers we'd done everything we could. And I was literally in my mind at the time, I was like, have you offered thoughts and prayers? I'm like, you make sure you do that as well, because you've got to tell them you've done everything. It doesn't do anything, but you've got to tell them that. And I've said here in the blog post, I suspect that when the inevitable class action comes and Qantas is before a judge somewhere, they will be trying to obviously paint themselves in the most positive light possible. I didn't mention this as well, but I'm a Qantas shareholder. So I feel like I wear all the hats. I am a frequent flyer, one of your best frequent flyers, who has had literally hundreds of flights on Qantas planes, according to my Flighty app. My data has been leaked in the breach. I'm a shareholder and I'm the data breach guy. So I think I have a well-rounded view on this. That argument about doing everything we could for our customers, when they end up in there being hammered by class actions and trying to protect shareholder interest, that line is going to come out. They're going to say, we even went and got an injunction. And then I guess it's up for the judge to decide whether that is actually of any value or not. But that will be there. I suspect that may also factor into their cyber insurance. Now, I'm not sure if their cyber insurance would necessarily, I don't think it would require them to go out and get an injunction in the event of a breach, but I imagine when they're trying to explain everything that they've done to try and mitigate the damage, that will be one of the things they pull out. And then the cyber insurance company will go, well, where were your thoughts and prayers? Make sure you do those as well. Let's read the comments. I haven't forgotten the coffee question too. I'm going to come back to that. James says, when a politician gets a law passed, we get to brag about it. Doesn't matter if the law is effective or redundant. People don't usually think that far. Al Tate loves the title of the blog post. Very good. It's one of those things that just came to me in a flash. I was laying in bed, seeing that Qantas injunction. In fact, I tweeted about it a couple of months ago, and I only just got around to writing it yesterday. Stefan's here. G'day, mate. James says, I'm surprised there isn't a Reddit thread already. There is our passwords. I'm not sure what that was in response to. We'll work it out. Oh, no. It'd be really cool to have been pwned, hang out and chat. I think there is actually, there's definitely been a lot of have been pwned on Reddit. I'm not sure there's a dedicated subreddit or not. Marek says, it's basically, this is the injunction. It's basically a poorly thought out PR gag order. Yeah, look, I'm kind of with you on that. Now, mind you, it's not actually a gag order on commentary about the breach. You can comment on the breach and Qantas's handling and the fact it's happened and how many Aussies have been impacted and everything else. You just can't access the data. So there's no limits on me writing this blog post. There's no limits on me also pointing out that Qantas has a dedicated page to help people who are impacted by this breach, and they offer multiple really good local Aussie resources for where you should go and learn about data breach stuff. Scamwatch, cyber.gov.au, ID Care, and the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. Every one of those 4 resources then recommends that people go to have a be pwned in order to assess the exposure in data breaches. There are other layers of irony to this whole thing I can't disclose here for various reasons, but the whole thing just... You know where it all goes wrong? Lawyers. As soon as the lawyers are involved, it all goes to hell. It really does. Al Tate says, I highly doubt they will retract the injunction. They won't. It's a permanent injunction now. It will always be there. It will never change. So that's just what we have to deal with. James says, Troy giving the American gun rationale almost perfectly, but for data. Yeah, it's a little bit like that. All right, so that's the story. Tomorrow, what's that now? About 30 hours, I guess. Tomorrow we'll see. I will have lots of commentary about it. I will talk about it next week. I have very unfortunately timed a 2-night getaway on Sunday and Monday night domestically, not too far away. So if shit goes absolutely crazy, I'll have a laptop. We'll see what I can do. But yeah. All right, let me answer the question from Al Tate about coffee. I have been searching for a coffee machine, a replacement coffee machine, for a very long time. And there are multiple things that I'm looking for in a coffee machine. First of all, the one I have at the moment, I have an Expo Bar Minuar 4, which I bought 10 years ago. It is a decade old now. It is a good machine. Depending on where you are from in the world, you may or may not know that Australia is, I would say, most people who come here say, the best coffee in the world. By a long shot, for various reasons. And a lot of it is to do with a lot of Italian migration in the 60s, brought the coffee culture into Australia, and it's now just become a very kind of niche thing. Now, I've been to Italy, I've been to a lot of places a bunch. Places where you would expect there to be really good coffee, and nothing compares to your normal average baseline here. So it's a massive coffee culture. And it's all about getting really great fresh beans from a local roaster and having a great, very often like a manual machine. There is stuff like drip coffee. It's not a thing. Certainly not for those that are enthusiastic. So it's a really big thing here. Now, I have had this machine for quite a while. There are several things that have begun to bug me over the course of time. One of them is it's not plumbed into mains. So it's got a container. I've got to keep filling it up. You can be halfway through drawing a shot and it's run out of water. And it's very frustrating. When we rebuilt our kitchen a couple of years ago, we actually put, we've got a water line in the little coffee nook we have. We have the connection ready for a coffee machine that can plug into mains. The other thing is, it's a manual machine and the lever and the timing is also completely manual. So every time I draw a shot, I need to turn it on and I need to turn it off. And I'm often making multiple coffees at a time. And I'm multitasking everything in life. I would like it to just run for the right amount of time. It doesn't do that. And here's the third thing, and this is something I've only started to realize over the course of time as I've become much more of a coffee snob. There are 3 phases to brewing coffee. Now, if you think about, if you've ever gone to everyone's been to a coffee shop. If you've ever gone to a coffee shop and you've watched it, they get the group head, they grind the coffee, they tamp it, they put it in the machine, they turn the coffee on, they turn the coffee off. Here's your shot. There are 3 phases in that actual drawing of the shot. So firstly, there's a pre-infusion. So imagine you've got this ground coffee. The water starts coming from the basket above into, or from the shower screen above into the basket with the coffee. It has to pre-infuse. So all of that coffee gets wet. That's phase 1. Now, once that coffee is wet, any more water that comes into the basket will come out through the bottom, and that's drawing the shot. That's your infusion phase. And then there's the post-infusion. So once you finish drawing the shot, and eventually no more water comes through. Now, from the point you turn the water off, there's obviously a little bit of time where it still comes through. Now, a coffee machine like we have at the moment has constant pressure across that entire phase. More commercial machines or more high-end consumer machines, you can dial in different pressures for each of those phases. And depending on the style of coffee you have, the amount of pressure and the amount of time for each one of those phases differs. And then being able to reproduce it differs as well. Now, serious coffee shops that are very passionate about this constantly tune this. So the local roaster that I go to, where I bought this machine from a decade ago, we went in there a couple of days ago looking at the machine I think we're going to buy, and they actually have a logbook throughout the day of how long it takes for each of these phases, and they were also recording the temperature and the humidity in the coffee shop, and they're constantly adjusting it just to get it just right. Now, I really wanted to get a coffee machine, I'm going to drop this in the chat here, called a Synesso ES1. And this machine looks freaking awesome. Now, the look is part of it. Okay, I'll drop that in there. It looks really, really cool. It is a high-end consumer machine. It can do all of those things. It's got an LCD screen and it is internet connected, so what's not to love? The problem is I've been waiting for this machine to come to Australia for a couple of years now, and what seems to have happened is they're not getting it complied in Australia because of something to do with the Wi-Fi implementation. Can you believe that? So of all the things that have to be right in a coffee machine, like the electrics and the pump and the screens and I guess the fire safety and everything else, the thing that's stopping it from being sold in Australia is the frickin' Wi-Fi. So there doesn't seem to be an end in sight for that. Now, there are other machines out there that look really cool. And this is part of it as well. So one of the things I want, and I'll put a photo of this when I get the new machine, but we've got a great coffee nook that has been built into the kitchen, a dedicated space. It looks awesome. People walk in like, wow, that looks really cool. It's got a great LED strip around it as well. It looks really nice. I want a machine that sits in there and is part of the little bit of the jewelry of the kitchen. I thought that Synesso ES1 machine I just posted looks really cool. I'm going to find the other thing that I want here in a moment to show you what these other machines look like. It looks really cool, but it's just not an option, unfortunately. There's an Instagram account. How to spell that? Instagram. Now, that's part of it. It's got to look cool. The other part of it is I want something that our local shop here is happy selling and happy supporting. Coffee machines do need TLC. They do need servicing every now and then as well. I get awesome support. I consider the guy that runs the place there a friend. It's a really great setup. I want something that they're happy selling. And there are a few things that I found where it's like, hey, this looks really cool and it ticks all these other boxes. What do you think? And he's like, no, look, we've just had shit support from them before. We don't sell them anymore or whatever. What I think we're going to do, as a long answer to your question, Al Tate, is I think we're going to get one of these, which is an MVP Hydra, also from Synesso. Now, MVP Hydras are much more commercially orientated. At our local coffee shop, where the one I'm talking about here, the roaster, they have an MVP Hydra with 3 group heads. So the group heads are the different things that make coffee. And they'll have 3 separate boilers and everything. You can get them with just a single one. It is a very full-on machine. And I'll tell you, it's a lot more expensive than that ES one you just mentioned as well. It is a very big commitment. It is a business expense for us as well, I will say. It sits here in our office. But they do look super, super cool, and you can customize them. Now, I'm just trying to find, I think the account here, I'm going to go and look at this next week. There's a company here called, I think it's Extracted, that does the customizations. Extracted Cafe, is this the one? No, that's wrong. Let me see, it's in my chat with my friend here. Extracted Espresso Solutions. Let's try and find that. Extracted. I know this has gone completely off topic from all the other cyber things, but I feel there's the Venn diagram of cybersecurity and coffee, I suspect is pretty solid. We'll see. It's just the account. Here we go. All right, so I'll drop the Instagram account here into the chat. And if you have a spin through there, you will see that Synesso MVP Hydra in various forms. And some of them, there was a green one in here, which shows the single group head model. And it looks really cool. Like, I think if you got it made in the style that you wanted, here we go. I'll drop that in. So I wouldn't get it in green. I would have it in some sort of black to fit with the kitchen design. It has wooden handles. I'd get them in like a black wooden handle. And I think I'd like maybe even like some bronze highlights or something. But it can be super, super cool. So as part of this 2-day trip away that we've got coming up, we'll be up in Brisbane. I'm going to go see these guys in Brisbane on Tuesday and see if we like the machine. It's a big unit too. You'll notice it sits quite high. Apparently you can sit it lower. It's a little bit too high for our use cases. But yeah, anyway, that's what we're thinking. It's been a couple of years of decision making, but I think that might be the right thing that will last us another decade and however many thousands of coffees, I guess, over that time. Yeah, we went off on a complete tangent there. Let me see if there's any other comments here that are relevant to business or coffee before I go and wrap us up for the day. Let's have a look. Ben here, if you're in Sydney, talk to Chris Mabry about his, been testing his shop. And I mean, this is the thing, like, I know there are lots of other machines out there, but once you start to get to the point where you're like, I also want to have good local support and I want to have it provided by someone we have a relationship with where I know that I'm going to get it serviced and looked after and everything. I'm sure this this MVP Hydra would be an exceptionally good machine. I've got no doubt about that. Mitch says, go big or go home. Al Tate, the Hydra 3 is almost 28 grand. Yes, so that is a 3 group head machine. So and that is for a commercial coffee shop. So if you're running a commercial coffee shop, yeah, you're going to pay 20 grand plus for a commercial coffee machine. Also, these are Australian dollars. They're not worth as much as the American ones. So that 28 grand coffee machine for a commercial coffee shop is more like 19,000 US dollars for the folks there, or about 14,000 GBP if you're in that part of the world. Yeah, and that's what it. Oh, Al Tate said, did your cert issue? Oh, you're talking about the Coinbase thing last week. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what went on there. I'm trying to remember how I solved it. I think it was a cert issue on the Azure end, which I fixed. So go and check that out. Funky Monk, for the price, does it come with a barista? Yep, me. I think the coffee thing as well. It's a bit of a process. Now, of course, you don't want to have too many of them, and that's the second one that I've made today. But for me, it's like getting up from the desk, going downstairs, going through the mechanical process of making it. There's just something satisfying about it. It gets me away from the computer too. James says only 18K in the US. That changes everything. Going out to Walmart to get one. Yeah, I know. It's stupid money. But again, look, it's something that lasts for a very, very long time. And I'm assured by our accountant that if it is for our home office, that it is a business expense, which kind of halves the price as well, as opposed to paying for it with post-tax dollars, if you're paying Australian tax. Ben says MVP Hydra is great. Plenty of people know how to service them. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. And look, you can, I've been watching a gazillion videos on it and getting the demo in the store as well, because they have the 3 group head one in the store. But it looks like it's very easy to go and program in terms of that pre-infusion, infusion, post-infusion. Also to program in terms of the exact temperature. I think he said they do participate in a lot of barista competitions and so on. And he said we run it, I think, at exactly 93.5 degrees Celsius, and you can tune it down to like 1/10 of a degree. Aaron, I wonder how much it costs compared to Starbucks every day. I don't even know how to answer that. Oh God, I hate Starbucks. It's terrible. Starbucks, interesting fact, has been an absolute flop in Australia. I think there's like 1 or 2 left, but there's such a strong coffee culture here, particularly in somewhere like Melbourne. Not knowing where you are, Aaron, maybe in Melbourne. Yeah, people want to go and get that sort of stuff done. They want to go and get some dedicated barista in a little hole in the wall coffee shop where, makes me want a coffee now. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. I know it's going to be a pretty chaotic few days, probably a week coming up. So I'm going to go and start getting myself hopefully in front of the 8 ball before that. Thanks for watching this week, folks. We'll see what next week is going to bring. I think it's very likely there's going to be a lot to talk about. Catch you then.